Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to be here today to introduce an activity that's undertaken sort of alongside CCDM and other research groups here in the context of the Analytics for the Australian Grains Industry program. So I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to introduce AHRI and what it does, and then we'll go into this new tool, which is absolutely brand new, and I'll explain just how new it is as we go. So first of all, AHRI is a new program that's been launched in the last few months, and it essentially is the evolution from what many of you would be familiar with as SAGI. So SAGI was the statistics for the Australian grains industry, and AHRI is the analytics for the Australian grains industry, and that small difference in terminology is absolutely vital, and I'll explain to you why that change has occurred. But SAGI dates right back to 2008, and many of the researchers here, or the people who have been involved in field trials and other things, would have had, in some shape or form, some support from SAGI to ensure that their experiments were analysed correctly and designed appropriately. And AHRI has also got that same context, but a much broader context as well. So to put that into a diagrammatic format, SAGI had expertise in biometry and experimental design and statistical modelling, computational solutions, and particularly genetics and pre-breeding. AHRI has that and a whole lot more. So as you've seen, of course, with evolution of data science, we now have a focus on machine learning, artificial intelligence, deeper maths, data science, bioinformatics, data interoperability, analytical pipelines, and sampling strategies. So AHRI is a much bigger beast than SAGI was, and encompasses a lot of those newer forms of analytical capabilities that you would expect in data science. It has three main significant programs, and the first one is around service and support, and that's central to what AHRI does. And that is what you would expect from data scientists and biometricians when you're designing and developing experiments, but also in the context of AHRI and looking at where GRDC's investment strategy is going, there's a leadership element there around helping to delineate and design research questions and develop appropriate research methodologies to answer industrial questions. There's also a strong focus on upskilling and awareness, and a focus on independent research and development focused on data science areas that are needed for the grains industry into the future. So why does that have anything to do with this? Well, one of the things that AHRI wishes to do is to take data and data sources and make them more interoperable and more available and more accessible to people. And because we have these new capabilities around being able to visualise data and present that, and we have a whole range of partnerships within the AHRI model that allow that to happen, this is actually one of the first cabs off the rank where we've sought to try and do that. So what we're trying to do is to create essentially a single point of contact that allows any member of the public access to the de-identified data around the resources, in this case which are held in CCDM and its partners for fungicide resistance. But the main pitch today is to just show you a glimpse of this and then invite those who might have interest in other forms of resistance or other spatial data sets to get into contact and not only give us some feedback upon the method that we're using here, but your invitation is open to others who might want to add other data layers to be able to visualise your data sets as well. So we wanted to develop a regional visualisation tool that showed people resistance levels in a highly apparent and flexible kind of way. We wanted to be able to link those tools to existing forms of information. Of course, in fungicide resistance, AHRI is our primary source of information and communication, and we will retain that for as long as we possibly can. But also, where possible, to include economic models, and the comments from the previous feedback from Mike's presentation clearly identify that need to make sure that when we present results, we're giving some indications around the economic value. Be able to include risk assessments and spatio-temporal probabilities of the likelihood of fungicide resistance, not just in your region, but in your backyard. And how we would then potentially use a tool like this to align with current benchmarking activities. So we've got a lot of sampling and a lot of benchmarking for fungicide resistance occurring nationally at the moment. Fran's team is flat out, and we've heard some really good information on that, and Tara gave a great presentation earlier showing just how important the regional and state links are to make sure that occurs. But we want to be able to tie that data together and make sure it's available. And in the near future, when we see the potential for new services that might relate to fungicide resistance testing, we want to be able to make sure that data goes somewhere which is then also available as well. That says exactly the same thing. Right, okay, so if this works, I can click on this. So this is just a 2-minute little video that's been provided to me by NGOs. And I just wanted to give a call out to NGOs. They are a partner in the AHRI program, and they were tasked up with this activity about 7 days ago. So there was a bit of a delay in getting, the contextualisation and the contracting in place, as there always is. And they've literally had this task for about a week. And I got this presentation about 8 o'clock last night, so I'm still getting used to it as well. I hope it works, but I'm going to talk you through it. And this is just a bit of a look under the hood in terms of what we're planning. And again, I'm looking for feedback, preferably after the session, and also people who might be interested in extending this to your own activities. So essentially, we're moving into a Google Earth platform. So we've got a much more powerful Google engine, that gives us the capability to visualise where we see test results and so on. And we've used the wheat powdery mildew data set as an example here. This is showing how we can very quickly visualise where that occurs on a map, and then move into a more interoperable kind of format where somebody can select the type of the disease or the type of crop that they're interested in, the disease of interest, the type of treatment, so the classification of fungicides in this case, and then have that visualised on the map. In the first instance, that can be visualised in a highly de-identified kind of way, and those cells can be changed depending on the data intensity and the level of privacy that you might want to use. So if you're presenting fungicide resistance data, you might want to use 50k squares. If you're presenting another form of data, you might want to use something smaller. Or we can use a heat map, such as this, and I actually prefer the heat maps. I think they're more informative. More importantly, users can select their own location, and they get an inferenced value of the likelihood of fungicide resistance in and around their area. They can easily access data from third parties or other web pages and bring that in. So they can take that inferred value and they can use that to make some informed decisions. Going forward, they can also then include information where we've got known parameterised models, or if we don't, we'll take best guesses and use some assumptions that allow us to look at factors such as the variety, chemical mix, crop rotations, and they can then modify that risk value going forward. Overall, it gives people the power to determine whether or not they feel they've got a high risk situation or a low risk situation. It might be enough to stimulate somebody to reach out for more testing, or it might be enough to stimulate someone to make a decision based upon the information that they have. We expect to be able to have about 8 different pathosystems available through this process by about April next year. And it should look quite different in its web page format. That's just the visualisation. I shall give you a quick peek. Maybe, hopefully. Some sort of landing page, lots of branding and identity and other things, clicking through to an area of interest. We might put herbicides there, we might put fungicides, insecticides, whatever we wish. But again, looking at, in this case, very similar data, but you can see clearly on this page that you'll have panels of information that you can refer to. You also have the capacity to do exactly the same sorts of things we've just seen in the video, and to get inferred values of the likelihood of resistance being important. We can build in more and more modelling to this as it becomes available, either from an epidemiological point of view or a probabilistic point of view based upon spatio-temporal patterns, and then present that in very simple formats in the case of here on the left-hand side, indicating the likelihood that you would have fungicide resistance in the location that's been selected on that particular map over here. So that's what we expect it to look like. So the next steps is for us to continue to generate this for fungicide resistance and have it ready to go. And we expect to have that available in early 2024. But AHRI is interested in extending this out to other pathosystems to other use cases where we have spatial data and we want to be able to make it readily available. AHRI's role is to be able to interact with researchers to ensure that is going to happen. I'd like to introduce Nathan O'Callaghan, who's up the back there, and he's just going to wave. Nathan's the director of AHRI, so if you'd like to have a chat with him at afternoon tea, you're welcome to do so. Otherwise, please reach out to me. I've got control over this particular project, and I look forward to interacting with people to make it a reality. Thank you. We have time for a couple of quick questions. Yep.
Great initiative. 2 questions. Firstly, is it just for private industry? Sorry, is it just for public industry to use, or does the private industry, are you interested in collaborating with them? And secondly, when you do the heat maps, is that just driven on probability, or are there some agronomic factors taken into account in those environments like rainfall, stubble loads, cropping rotations, etc., that drive the risk?
Yes, and possibly. So very happy to talk to anyone, and this would be a publicly facing tool that's accessible by anybody in the public domain. We have had interest from other production areas such as cotton and horticulture to do similar things. We've had interest from companies to do similar things. So very happy to have conversations with people about where we can start and where we can stop. In terms of the data that I've just displayed to you, that is simply a geospatial inference based on the data points that have been made available. In the future, as we build more epidemiological models, I don't see any reason why they can't be incorporated into those data layers.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, it looks really exciting. My mind's racing, but I guess I'm not tech savvy. But have you thought about APIs and whether this sort of information could be even more readily available for agros through something like back paddock?
Yes. So it's designed from scratch to enable that to happen. It would be possible to take a product like this and build it into an existing platform, but clearly there's a much broader discussion around how that should occur and with whom it should occur and under what circumstances. So built initially as a publicly facing tool, but potentially, and using this particular platform, there's an opportunity to incorporate that into other formats, or to take the same data sets, use a different interface to allow that to be more readily accessible. But the APIs and the capacity to allow not so much the raw data, of course, but the processed data to be more generally available is all built into this product. Yep. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.